I got back from Israel, and the first thing you wanted to tell me is that you installed the bidet. But, no pun intended, we've waited to talk about it until the microphones are on. And so now, I want to know, how is your warm water bidet changing your life? Oh my goodness, you're hesitating.
It's complicated, Matt. So
it's not complicated. There's a dial, you turn it, and warm water illuminates your butt. That wasn't the right word.
That's the thing about the warm water, right? So when you wash your hands,
okay,
you turn on the water, and let's
Check.
say you just put your hands in, and it's a little too warm, right? Oh, it's cold or whatever.
Ooh, yeah.
What I have learned about my body is that there is a certain thickness of skin between the temperature receptors in my hand and the outside surface of my hand. So there's a heat capacity there, right?
You got hand blubber.
Yeah, you have to warm up the meat stuff between the thermal receptors and the outside of your hand. And at that moment, you're like, ooh, this is hot. I should remove my hands. And as you remove your hands, you can still feel the hotness because the hand blubbery meat stuff is hot at that point, right?
It retains that heat for a second, long enough for you to get real mad and swear at yourself under your breath.
Heat capacity is the scientific term. What I've learned about myself is that my rectum does not have much heat capacity. It is instant, my friend.
It does let you know if you got it wrong, doesn't it?
And the thing is, it's like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. You can't pull your hands out.
No, I mean, your hand is on the lever, though, right?
No, because I'm hovering off the seat.
So if it gets wrong, you just abort. Just turn that thing. It's a plunger, man. Like, you can just whack your hand down on that lever, and it kills everything instantly.
No, it's not instant. I mean, you're hurt by that point. And the alternative is turning on the cold water and then ramping up to the warm water.
No, that's like overcorrecting when your car wobbles a little bit. Only horrible things happen after that. You can't go hot water, cold water. You just turn it off, adjust the way you want it to go, and then turn it back on. But you've got to know that spot, man. You got to have it figured out and marked. You can figure that out with your hand by doing some dry runs. I mean, they're not really dry, but then you get the temperature where you want, and you just keep it right there. There's no reason to ever adjust your temperature dial.
Did you say hand?
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, so here's what I'm picturing.
You put your hand in there?
No. Oh, my goodness. Wow. You're literally a rocket scientist. I'm surprised this is so difficult. I'm going to walk you through it. Here's what you do. You have all your clothes on, right? Nobody's pooping in this scenario.
Okay.
I'm not, you're not, nobody.
Okay.
You get down, say, like on your knees next to the toilet, like you're working on a toilet, right? And you put your hand over the warm water rocket so you don't hose the rest of your bathroom there. And you just turn that on and you feel it with your hand, that stream of water. And you're like, would that feel good on my undercarriage? Yes, no. And if the flow chart takes you toward no, you just adjust that temperature dial until it feels like it'd be about right. Then turn the whole apparatus off and just get back on there and give it a shot, and you should be fine. I think the problem is that you're doing all your trial runs, with your butt.
Okay, well, you asked. There you go.
I did. I'm unsatisfied with the answer.
All right, well, shifting gears dramatically and in a very classy way.
Yeah.
You went to Israel, and
yes.
And I want to talk about it. And so here's what I did. I sent a tweet out from the No Dumb Q's Twitter account, which is where we tweet things like this occasionally. You can follow us there at NoDumbQS. And I asked people what they want to know about your trip to Israel. And I was hoping we could do that for this episode. How's that sound to you?
Fun. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Real quick, before we start with the questions about Israel, I got an A- in my class.
Did you really? Yesterday, you suggested it might not be so positive. What happened?
So here's how it went down. I took an exam. I had to get an 87 to pass with an A. I got an 84. I was like, no! It's like right under an A-. And then I was telling a buddy of mine in class, and he goes, well, you remember we did that whole extra assignment when he offered extra credit halfway through the semester. Remember that? I was like, oh, we did. And so I emailed him. I was like, hey, I was just wondering how this is going to apply. He goes, well, it applied to blah, 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 and you're going to end up with an A-. I was like, yes. So
it's like finding the extra life quarter in your pocket.
Yeah, it's a big deal, man. I was excited about it.
What would have happened? What would have happened to you psychologically if you'd received a B in that class?
Nothing at all. I mean, it was a hard class. If I got a B, I'm like, sweet.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You
Good.
saw what I was working on. It's not a joke.
I have no idea. I saw it. That doesn't mean I understood any of it. There were some symbols and figures I've seen other places. That's about as far as I could take that.
Okay, so let me set this up for everybody. You went to Israel, and before we get into these questions that people have tweeted us, I want to just give you carte blanche here to explain why Israel and how you got there.
It was cheap. I mean, obviously I'm interested in Israel because I think about the Bible and history a lot, and a lot of Bible and history happened there. But we divided the sabbatical into 3 parts, which I'm still on. Part 1 was come hang out with you. Part 2 was go somewhere cool and have an adventure, but we couldn't decide. We had all kinds of ideas and cool offers, but money's a factor there as well. And so finally, Camilla just started doing this Google search. I don't know what the service is called, but I think it's through Google. And you can set crazy parameters, wide open parameters. And so we literally searched flights to somewhere, from somewhere, at some point, and then just sorted it by cost. And we're like,
Really?
Oh, check this out. Israel by way of Iceland is super cheap. Well, let's just do that. We went for $2,000 for the whole family.
No way. So that's 5 people for $2,000. 400. That's round trip.
Yeah.
Well, where did you stay? Did you have a house or?
We did Airbnb for all of our lodging. And so we just
awesome.
picked a route. We went clockwise, starting in Tel Aviv, up and around through the north, back down along the Dead Sea, and back up through Palestine, Bethlehem, and then finished up in Jerusalem.
That's awesome, dude. Okay, so you want to get into these questions?
Yes, rock and fire.
Okay, here's the deal. I'm just going to state the person's name, their Twitter account, and their question. And I might modify the question a little bit. And before we get going in this, I just want to set the stage for everybody, because you are not, just full disclosure here, you're not like an Israel expert or anything like that. And so you're probably going to say a lot of things that are wrong. Would you agree?
Well, I assume that most of the things I say about most things are wrong, but particularly about Israel. Everywhere else I've ever traveled, I at least know what all the symbols mean. And I've looked at Hebrew and studied Hebrew a little bit, but I don't have a lick of it. So we were completely illiterate the entire time, and I'm not entirely positive we went to Israel. I couldn't prove it to you. I think the ticket said Israel.
My point is the Israel-Palestinian conflict, whatever, Wikipedia page is like one of the most conflicted things on the internet. And I know if you say something wrong on the internet, people try to crucify you. And so my thought here is people are going to be mean in the comments of the subreddit probably. So I'm just trying to get that.
No, they won't.
I'm trying to get ahead of this and be like, hey, Matt doesn't want whatever particular people group you root for to get in trouble. Because I'm assuming we're going to talk about conflict in this.
Okay,
right?
all right. So you're not talking about like the whole history of Israel and all of that. You're talking about the really touchy stuff.
There's a lot of questions here, man. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff.
Okay, and I may have thoughts on that, but 1, I am not an Israel expert. 2, in terms of just the geography and the history of it, though, I've never gone to a place that I've never been before, that I've spent more time studying than this. So I at least had some idea of the lay of the land, and I knew a lot of the names of people who lived there in the ancient past, but I quickly realized I know nothing about this place in 2018 when I showed up. That's my version of the disclaimer.
Sweet. Okay. Disclaimer out of the way. Here we go. First question is from Forrest Hobbs. His Twitter account is @RunHobbsRun, which I actually like a lot. First question. What does Matt regret not doing whilst in Israel?
Whilst?
I don't know.
Whilst?
It's a weird word I don't use.
Okay, that's all right. I'm tracking with it. That's an easy one. We didn't go to the tunnel that Hezekiah built in I don't know when he was alive, like 600 and something, 700 BC. Had to be the 700s.
That's my go-to fake Bible book name. It's like it's in Hezekiah 5:15 because
fourth hesitations. Hezekiah's better.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, he was a king, and the Bible describes him as a good one and a pretty smart one. And he was getting attacked by, I think, Assyria. It was usually Assyria at that point. And so some king with a really interesting name was coming down and wanted to lay siege to Jerusalem. And so I think they had to build a tunnel to get a water supply outside of the ancient city. And again, I would know if I'd gone, but I didn't go, so I don't know. I think this tunnel is somewhat recently discovered. And whatever the case, it looks really cool, and I wanted to go, but we were Jerusalem'd out. That place was a zoo, and we were tired.
So to be clear, it was to supply Jerusalem with water during a siege?
I think so.
We had some kind of historical information about this, but they didn't know about it, like where it was, and then they found it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
We did get to go to something kind of like that, though, in Accra. No, they don't call it Accra. Accra is the Crusader name. Akko. It's north of Tel Aviv. It's up by Haifa on the coast, and it was like the Crusader capital in the Middle Ages. The Crusades were like the 11th century through the 14th century, depending on how you count it. And they went and they built like European style kingdoms and city-states all over the Holy Land. It was a very, very weird time, and Accra was crazy. I mean, it was like being in Europe. Just this medieval city, and the Templars operated out of there. And
the Templars?
Well, I don't know. Some people say Templars, Templars, whatever.
Templars sound like old people that hang around a temple and like play dice or something.
What?
And wear fancy hats like the Cahaba Shriners or whatever.
Oh, I could see that.
Hey, yeah.
They have this reputation though for being like super sneaky, right? Like the Templars are always the ones who had the Holy Grail or discovered America or hid the crown jewels, and they built this tunnel underneath Accra to move super sneaky stuff back and forth to the port, between the port and their like little compound or whatever, so that nobody could see it. And you got to go down there into the tunnel. There's water in there too. So I feel like I got to see something kind of like Hezekiah's tunnel. But
I think there's a lot of tunnels over there, man, because I'm always hearing about, in the news, they're talking about finding tunnels that are bringing missiles in from this place or that place, and they're launching rockets.
Oh, I didn't go in any of those. I didn't see any rockets.
All right, so Run Hobbs Run also asks, would Matt go back?
Yeah, under the right circumstances. I feel like I got what I needed to get out of it. And maybe I'll see what other questions come up before I tear into that, but I'm good. I liked it. Everybody was great in Israel, in Palestine. It was beautiful, but I'm happy to be home.
Okay. Yeah, and he's got this multi-part question where he breaks a bunch of stuff out, but I think we're going to get to some of this stuff on other questions here, so we'll just move on.
I'm having fun. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, people ask some really cool stuff. Chris Stoker, that's with a K, KRIS_STOKER, asks, surprise, your entire family has just won a trip back to Israel. What's the first thing you do that you didn't do last week?
Ooh.
And you said
Hezekiah's tunnel. I'd go with that. I would start by apologizing to my kids who never want to be on an airplane again. Then I would try to sell the trip to someone else because I don't want to go back next week.
Really? So like you're tuckered out on it. I mean, you really don't want to go back ever?
You remember I went to Great Smoky Mountains and tried to fish all day after I left your place?
Yeah.
I don't think I've told you this yet. Yeah, I'm telling you this. Well, I have waders that work really well for the kind of rocks I wade on in Wyoming on the creek beds. But if I get on really slippery, gooey rocks, they do not grip well. So I was going to buy these super awesome cleats, but I forgot to do it. So I had my slippery shoes on.
I think you did tell me this. Yeah, you slipped on the rocks and fell down and got all upset, right?
Yeah. I didn't like thrash around like Shooter McGavin over the golf course incident, but like I got up, I mean I filled my waders with water, not with anything else, and I got up out and I looked back at my wife and mouthed an offensive word to express how disappointed I was with having fallen hard into this river. But it hurt. Like, it was a pretty good shot, you know? And we get to Israel, and I'm really dealing with like weird pain in my left leg. Well, that's been a week and a half. I mean, I didn't connect it with that at all. Like, to be totally truthful, I wondered if I maybe had a blood clot. A friend had told me about a fishing accident that caused him to get a blood clot. I thought, well, maybe that's what happened.
Oh, dude. So you had a little hypochondria going on?
Yeah. I just had a couple of weird health things even when I was hanging out with you, and I've been healthy as a horse for my whole life. Like, that was kind of a weird little moment there when I called you in Alabama and was like, hey, I hurt. Does this sound right to you? And so I was doing all this mental math, like, is something really wrong here? Well, I look in the mirror and I've got a bruise like the size of a cantaloupe on my butt, on my hip where I fell. And it turns out
you didn't have your bidet.
Well, that couldn't have helped. It was probably just backed up horribly. No, I know exactly what it was. It's right where I fell. And it bruised like something fierce. So I literally went and saw a doctor in Israel, and they mocked me. But they were like, no, you're going to be okay. That's a hematoma.
So this is serious. This isn't a joke. Like, you were upset, or whatever the word is. You were concerned enough that you actually went to a doctor in a foreign country?
Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Like, the pain, it was just brutal all the way through my leg. Like, all the way down, calf and hamstring, and even all the way down in my foot. And I was like, how can this pain keep migrating? What kind of injury would, like, move? So is there an alien
scary
in there, some freaky stuff? And I don't know what a blood clot is. I don't know how it works, but I know it can kill you. So it's like, well, maybe it's a blood clot and it's moving, or, you're laying awake at night in a foreign country and freaking out because you're hurting in a way you never have. So I went and got some help, and it's still not fully resolved. And so that trip back on the plane, standing feels great. Sitting hurt. It's almost healed up now, but it did hurt. And so on that flight back, man, like, you got to sit for 14 hours, right? In these tiny little seats.
Yeah, and that's like where you get blood clots.
On airplanes. That's the rumor. So, like, it hurt the second I sat down on the plane. So I had to do this, like, Doctor Strange chakra thing in my brain. It was one of the most taxing mental things I've ever done, just to fly back with this pain in my leg. So all of this is to say, fly fishing is very dangerous. No one should do it, especially anywhere near where I live. Just leave those fish alone. It's not worth the risk. Second, if I want
an elaborate
trip
story just
right
to get people
back,
not to catch your fish,
I wouldn't want to do it because it would hurt my leg, and I don't think I can mentally pull that off twice in a row.
Well, what was it like going to the doctor in Israel? Did they speak English and Hebrew in the hospital? I guess, and Arabic, right?
Yeah, I heard a lot of Arabic. Or what I assume to be Arabic. What the heck do I know, dude? I was a fish out of water there. I saw Arabic. I saw Hebrew, and then underneath that, Arabic, and then sometimes underneath that, English. They just couldn't understand what I was saying. I was there by myself. The family's back at the place in Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee waiting for me. And so I just drove into their emergency room. I was like, I have a problem. I don't really know what it is. I'd like to talk to a doctor, please. The lady didn't understand me. She brought over somebody else. She didn't understand me. Finally, I got in, and the doctors immediately just started making fun of me. They're like, you're fine. You're fine. Like, I don't feel fine. It feels really bad. You're fine. And they said a bunch of stuff in Hebrew and laughed at me, and they're having a great old time. I'm like, I'm in agony. I don't go to the hospital. This is like my second time ever. Like, please help me. And finally, they brought in somebody who spoke a little more English, and he told me I was an idiot and that I'd be fine, and that it was just a very, very deep bruise, and to get over it and go enjoy my vacation. And they gave me a shot in my butt of some kind of, I don't know, painkiller or steroid or something. I don't know what they gave me a shot of. They said it would help. I mean, maybe it's just water to get me out of there, and sent me on my way. And that was it. And I swiped my card for $400.
Did they do an x-ray or anything?
No.
That's crazy, dude.
I am feeling better, so I assume they were right. But it was weird, and if I'm to be totally truthful, I was a little freaked out by it.
I've never wanted to ask this before, but let me ask. I mean, how does your butt look right now? I mean, is it bruised?
Oh, no, that's not. I'm not uncomfortable with that question at all. Firm, shapely, like somebody who doesn't skip leg day. A little more tan than you would expect, but I make an effort.
Okay, you know exactly what I'm trying to ask.
I don't.
Do you have a bruise or?
Oh, yeah, down to about the size of a baseball.
Dang, that's a big deal, man.
Yeah, that was a
Sorry
month
about
ago that I fell in the river like a clumsy idiot.
The question was, what would you do if you went back? And you said Hezekiah's tunnel, but you're, I don't know. It sounds like you're mixing two things here. You're mixing the relief of being back in a country where you speak the same language as the doctors with, I had a less than optimum experience in another foreign country. Is it possible that you're having two separate thoughts right now?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, the trip was great. I hurt the entire time, but the trip was great. I just feel like we saw the stuff we wanted to see. And part of my answer, I guess, is a little bit religious because I'm not the version of Christian or religious that is very mystical. It's not that magical for me to go and be like, whoa, Jesus was probably right here. I already knew that Jesus was probably right there because a lot of historical record that he was a person who existed, regardless of what somebody might make of the claims to deity associated with him. And he had to live somewhere. And everything points to him living, like right there.
That's actually Matthew Hofstadter's question at O Music, 000 Music. He says, what was it like to walk where Jesus walked and where thousands of years of biblical history took place? Also, what was it like to be a Christian in an area where three religions intermingled?
Those are great questions. It was awesome to be where Jesus walked the first time. We started in Tel Aviv, Joppa. That's the place where Peter in the Bible is purported to have healed Tabitha. And then we went up to Caesarea, where almost certainly Paul had a couple of hearings with some Roman governors and then got shipped off to face trial with Nero in Rome. And then we went up to Akko, which I talked about. And then we went to the Sea of Galilee, which is where like 2/3 of the story of Jesus takes place. It's where he lived. It's where he hung out. It's where all the miraculous claims are purported to have happened. And so coming over that ridge and being like, dang, that's the Sea of Galilee. That was a pretty big deal. I wouldn't say emotionally moving, but that's Jesus' stomping grounds. Crazy. That was really cool. And then when we went to Capernaum, where Jesus probably lived for a little bit, that was really neat too. And then after that, I was just over it. Not like ready to go, but I was like, okay, I've now been somewhere where Jesus hung out. I get it. Now my brain was kind of on to other stuff.
You see, I've never really personally had a draw to it. I've had chances and people have asked me to go to Israel in the past. The reason I think a lot of people are drawn to it, they're like, well, you're a Christian. Obviously, this is super important to you. But for me, it has nothing to do with Earth. You know what I mean?
Well, what do you mean? What does it have to do with?
I don't know. I'm going to turn up the JPM dial for a second, the Jesus per minute dial. It has to do with like a kingdom that has nothing to do with the physical earth. It's all about ideas and love and grace and everything else. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it happened in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or the Sea of Galilee. I don't know. I've often thought about that. It's interesting that Jesus, at that moment in history, right there in Jerusalem, that area, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That was a weird, unique place at that time.
Oh my, yeah.
And so it's interesting that one of the largest religions in the world, depending on whatever you believe, it's really strange to think that that guy walking in that place had such a huge influence on the world.
That is what stood out to me right there.
Right. Is it like a nothing dirt area? I mean, I don't know.
We need to talk about the geography of it because you're going to find that interesting. But you go to Capernaum, the town was obviously not big. Even if somebody is not into religious stuff or Jesus or anything like that at all, I think one of the take-homes from visiting that site is this is Nowhereville. Hey, who cares about this little fishing village that no longer even exists? It's just ruins, and it has been for centuries. Some guy from here built something that, whether you're into it or not, transformed the next 2,000 years of history.
But something I've always thought would happen is it just becomes this tourist trap kind of thing.
Oh,
like,
yuck.
oh, this is where Jesus bought bananas or whatever. I don't even know if bananas are a New World fruit, I think. Whatever. I've always thought that if you go there, there's going to be people selling things. You went to David and Goliath. The battle went down, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I referenced that briefly when we were talking the other night, and then we decided not to talk about it until now.
Someone told me that so many people go out into this valley and pick up stones that they just go buy a dump truck of rocks and just dump them out there. Someone told me that. Is that true?
Maybe. I'm not sure they've got the right spot, if that's the case. I think they might have the wrong spot. The place where I think that happened, and it's really well documented, somewhere in the Old Testament, they talk about where, David and Goliath fought, and all the details are in there about this mountain's here and this thing's here and that town was right there. And so you really can triangulate where it probably happened. And so where I think it happened, and again, I'm just some guy and I might not have even actually been in Israel, is in like somebody's onion field. I don't think I was probably supposed to go into their onion field. There's nowhere to park, no marker, no nothing, but we sneaked back in there and all the little stones that were in the bottom of the brook are the exact same type of rock that the whole hillside is made out of. So it makes me think that was probably stuff from the hillside that fell down into this brook at the bottom of that incline and just got smoothed out over time. To your point, that was the least commercialized thing that we found. It wasn't commercialized at all. But some of the other stuff, oh my goodness.
Yeah, we'll get to that. There's some other questions here in a second, but let's get to the second part of Matthew's question. He said, what was it like to be a Christian in an area where three religions intermingled? I don't think he's implying that doesn't happen other places, but it's a very big thing. Like can you feel it in the air? I remember in Africa, which I reference often, I remember you could always tell when you're in the Christian side of the village because the pigs start to run around everywhere. Everywhere else is the Islamic side of the village.
Yeah.
Was it stuff like that? Like you could tell when you were in different districts, or how was it?
Well, Jerusalem's just cut up into 4 quarters. There's Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and then Armenian. Most people, I don't know, there's so many other places you could have for a 4th quarter, but it's Armenian. And the Christian quarter was maybe a tick more commercialized than anywhere else, maybe a lot more. I don't know. It was a very disorienting place. Old city of Jerusalem, that is. I didn't notice that much of a difference. Maybe I'm just thick-skulled, but I saw the same thing in Israel that I've seen in my travels through the South. In a very practical, real-world sense, people are just pretty decent to each other. You can tell that guy's probably from one group and that lady's probably from another group, but I don't know, they're being pleasant and decent, doing business together just fine. I don't know. I know there are horrible tensions there at times, but I didn't see it.
I heard there were guns everywhere. Like the cops are on the street corners with like full SMGs just hanging out.
I've seen more in Europe and Latin America and much more in Africa. I
Really?
expected it to be a gun fest, and it really wasn't.
Really?
Yeah, a dude had some enormous rifle that I've never even seen that make before at the hospital, and maybe by a couple of banks, but no, I just didn't see a lot of guns.
Okay.
So I don't know. I found it invigorating to be around such a mingled religious site. Something profound has happened there, and we can write that off as a bunch of people being hysterical and having 3 separate delusional fantasies, and maybe, I mean, it's possible that everyone just has their own delusion that they attach to Jerusalem. Or maybe those darts are somewhere in the neighborhood of the bullseye and people understand that something really significant happened in that part of the world. And so there is something historically sacred attached to it. I didn't find the pluralism of it threatening, like, oh no, there are people who don't think what I think here. That undermines me and makes me wonder about what I believe. I found it invigorating. And my interactions with Muslims were spectacular, just across the board. Everybody I met, everybody I talked to was absolutely wonderful, and they know who I am. They know why I'm there. I mean, I speak English. I'm from the United States. I mean, 3 different groups thought we were Mormons. The Jewish people I interacted with were wonderful. The Palestinians I interacted with were wonderful, and were overwhelmingly Christians. I met a ton of Christian Palestinians.
I'm going to take a break here in a second, but I have a challenge to your everybody just got along and it's a kumbaya moment, because
Well, I didn't
there's
say
a story.
that. Okay, go ahead.
There's a story about a ladder that says otherwise, right?
Wait, what ladder? Huh? What?
The ladder? Anyway, let's take a quick break, and
Okay.
then I'm going to come back and ask you about this ladder.
All right.
This episode of No Dumb Questions is sponsored by Audible. And Matt, I did a software upgrade in my truck's console user thing, and I can now hit a button, no joke, on the little navigation screen in my truck, and it will save a bookmark in the book I'm listening to my phone. How rad is that?
I need to go to the dealer and see if I can get the update on my software because I listen to audiobooks while I drive all the time.
Me too.
Are you still on 12 Rules for Life or Living by Jordan Peterson?
I am. I'm not done with it yet. What about you? What do you listen to?
I am most of the way through American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I don't even know how you say it. It's pretty good, man. Full voiced cast kind of book. And it mingles everything I'm into, like everything I'm thinking about right now, like the American road trip, theology, history. It's good.
You've been chewing through the books on the summer sabbatical road trip here, haven't you?
I have. Yeah, I did How to Think by Alan Jacobs. I've flirted with the Peterson book.
You did Ender's Game.
Yeah, the whole family did Ender's Game, which was rad. I've got 4 or 5 more still in my queue that I went crazy one day and just got a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to do it all summer. I figure I got fly fishing, I got mowing the lawn. I should be able to get through a lot of books with as much as I'm outside.
Yeah, so if you want a free trial of Audible, go to audible.com/NDQ for No Dumb Questions, audible.com/NDQ, and you can get a free trial.
And you can do the text thing now if you're in the U.S., right? You text NDQ to 500 and the same thing happens on your mobile device?
It'll text you a link. It'll respond, and then you just click that link, and it's the same thing. And to be clear on the exchange that's happening here, the big elephant in the room, this is how No Dumb Questions is sponsored through Audible. Every time you use that link, that's what tells them that, hey, we associate Audible with No Dumb Questions. Give us the secret internet points. That's pretty much how it works, right?
My mom has so many audiobooks.
So again, if you want to support No Dumb Questions, we would greatly appreciate it. Go to audible.com/NDQ and get a free trial of audiobooks. You're going to get smarter. You're going to learn stuff. I mean, I like stories. If you're into fiction, you can get any story you want. It's good for you. I can't recommend this enough. Audible.com/NDQ or text NDQ to 500.
Thanks to everybody who's already done the Audible thing, and looking forward to hearing from people who pick it up for the first time here.
Oh, it's about time to pick the next book, though, isn't it, for the book club?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I finished that book, and we need to talk about it. It might be too potent, because it is messing with me.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we'll discuss it.
I'll listen to it, we'll discuss it, and we'll see if that's the next book. So, audible.com/NDQ, be a part of that. Okay, this ladder, dude. There's a ladder on a building, and different people are fighting about it, so they gave the key to a Muslim guy. What's the deal?
I have literally no idea what you're talking about.
You seriously don't?
No, I don't know what we're talking about. There's a ladder fight?
Yeah, there's some kind of building, and there was a ladder that goes up to a door, and like half the group wants to move the ladder, the other doesn't. And so there was a fight. I think it was a fight between the Jews and the Christians, and they couldn't agree on whether or not they moved the ladder, and so they gave
Muslims are going to ref it?
Yeah, basically. And this ladder hasn't moved in 100 years. You haven't heard of this?
No, I really haven't. I'm sorry. I try to be a person who knows things, but I don't know this thing.
Immovable ladder on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Really?
You were right there and you didn't see this?
No,
yeah, there's a ladder.
That's weird. I didn't notice the ladder.
You know what? I bet you queued directly under this door. There's a ladder that's... Google it right now.
I'm Googling it. What is going on? Okay, yeah, I think I can picture... Yes, I did queue right under that door. There were more people there then. Who cares? The sad reason why no one has moved this church's ladder for 300 years. I don't get it, man.
That ladder has been sitting there for 300 years because of a little bickering squabble.
I don't.
Isn't that funny?
I don't get it.
I don't know. It's a story to read. People should just read that and consume it because we don't know anything about it.
The ladder controversy goes all the way back to the time when there were Ottoman sultans there. What? They have a written agreement about the ladder? Man.
It's symbolic.
Religion produces some really neat stuff. And then there's this.
I think it's interesting that it's a ladder, which typically symbolizes ascent to a higher place from where you are.
Oh, my. Yeah, or also symbolizes complete menialness and things that don't matter at all and shouldn't be bickered over, let alone for centuries at a time.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I'm speaking critically of something I don't understand. I just need to shut up now.
I know. Okay, so here, back to the Twitter questions. Okay, Mr. Milligan, that's his Twitter handle, asked, what's your solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict?
I don't know.
So just go ahead and answer that.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's an obvious and great question. I don't know. I don't understand.
Moving on to his next question.
Enough.
Part 2. Yeah, let's just get by that one. Part 2, is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre really built over Christ's tomb? And what's the deal with, there's a follow-up by someone else. So what is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Okay.
Sepulchre? How do you say that first of all?
Sepulchre. Yeah, like an old school tomb, sarcophagus, something like that.
So what is it? Did you go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. It's in the Christian quarter of the old city of Jerusalem. It is a church whose foundations were put in place by Saint Helena, the mother of Constantine, who, legalized Christianity in 314 AD, the Edict of Milan. The date might not be quite right, but it's something like that. He's the guy who came along and was like, hey, the church gets their property back. No more persecution. This will be a tolerated religion. A lot of people mistakenly think he made it the state religion of the Roman Empire, but that was Theodosius, a guy who came a little later. But his mom was like, hey, we should go try to preserve as much of what's still in the Holy Land as possible. So with his blessing, she went on this big journey to Jerusalem and talked to people and looked at some other evidence to try to figure out where important stuff must have happened. And I think the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century, the guy who built the wall between Scotland and England, Hadrian, to, quash some of the momentum of Christianity, had Roman pagan sites built over the top of important Christian sites. So Helena used some of that to kind of reason back to where these places must have been. So there's a decent tradition to say that Jesus' tomb might be at that location. I don't know. I've always felt a little skeptical of that, but wow, the people who were there worshiping, they were not skeptical of it. It was pretty nuts. I got a lot of video of how people responded to being around the tomb of Jesus.
What were they doing?
Well, when you first come in, there's this cracked old 1st century-ish sarcophagus lid. I assume 1st century. And I guess people associate that with being...
Okay, so I'm envisioning a square box like I've seen in cemeteries in New Orleans.
Yeah, so just picture that without the box and just the lid.
Okay, just the lid. Is it like a long rectangular...
Yeah.
Like you see in European cathedrals and stuff. When they
you're tracking.
Okay, got it.
And it's just laying there on the floor when you first walk in. And again, this is where some of the theology of it comes into play. For most Protestants, like you and me, we don't believe that there's any power in these locations. We don't believe that if you touch it, like God does something for you, or you're closer to God or more connected with God. But there's some other traditions that do hold those kind of views and have held those kind of views for a very long time.
Like Catholicism?
Well, yeah. For example, Catholicism. I think there was a very intentional mingling on the part of the church, an accommodation of some of the pagan cosmologies that people really didn't want to let go of. I mean, they've got all these gods associated with all these things. And rather than fighting the uphill battle of saying, no, if you accept Jesus, all of those traditions have to go away, they just found Christian substitutes for that stuff. Well, the way people interacted with the pagan gods before Christianity came around was in like high places and holy sites where they could offer certain offerings or commune in certain ways for certain favors. And they thought sometimes in terms of places where the gap.
Did you just say commune in certain ways? You were talking about talking about prostitution.
Oh, no, that is part of the way pagan religion worked back in the day. But no, that's not what I meant there.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. You know how you have the ability to artfully say things that don't work for me. I need it spelled out into plain old Alabama English.
Okay, all right. No, that's fair. That's fair. No, for once, what I was saying was not a veiled reference to prostitution. So
okay, got it. I'm tracking now. I just want to make sure I get this.
But there was this idea that there were certain places on Earth where the gap between the otherworldly and this world was a little thinner than in other places. And I think Catholicism and the Eastern Church both kind of latched onto that idea a bit. And so there became this whole trade of relics, like body parts of dead holy people.
No way.
Oh, yeah, man.
Like the finger of Peter or something like that?
The finger of Thomas.
Forgive me for not knowing this. You're serious.
Yeah, well...
like a magic juju.
Yeah, look, full disclosure, I think it's complete nonsense. Complete nonsense.
You've got that tone that says, Destin, you're being offensive to people and I don't know it.
Is that what it is?
Am I being offensive and I don't know it?
There are people who still think that there are artifacts and locations that are imbued with a unique power from God or a unique closeness from God. And that if somehow you have an encounter there or you touch it or you bring a handkerchief and rub it on something that is an artifact, that somehow the power of God goes with you and you get stuff. Or I don't even know. It's not what I believe, so it's hard for me to be fair fully. I'm trying to be charitable, and I feel like I'm just sounding like a big critical jerk. So, yeah, people think this. And so for me, I walk in and I see the lid of what almost certainly is not the original tomb of Jesus laying there on the floor. And I'm like, well, that's old. And I guess it could be some kind of lid from the tomb of Jesus, but it doesn't really match the account. I don't buy it. Whatever.
Yeah, because it rolled away. Like they said, I'm sitting here looking at a... someone sent me a hamburger pillow a long time ago. They sewed like all the different parts of a hamburger. Like there's a slice of cheese and there's a patty and a tomato. It's really fantastic. There's even sesame seeds on the bun. It's amazing. So I have it sitting up on the wall in front of me. And so I've got this circular disc. I'm sorry, this is where my brain went. And so I'm envisioning, I've always heard in the things I've read that the stone was rolled away from the tomb.
Yeah.
And when you started describing a square lid, I'm like, it's hard to roll a square.
And yeah, you're right. And you know what? Let's go right back to the initial disclaimer, which is I have no idea what I'm talking about on any of this stuff. I assumed that must be somehow associated with a sarcophagus or maybe, I don't know what it is, but it's associated with the site of Jesus' burial. I don't even know what that slab was for.
There was nobody there to describe it to you?
Oh, you couldn't have heard anything. It was chaos. That place was a zoo, man. It did not feel much like a church. What I do know is that people must ascribe to that thing some sort of sacred power, whether they associate it with Jesus' tomb or whatever or not. Because when I walked in, there was a dude laying on the ground, hugging it, and like singing a song to it and crying with his eyes closed.
What?
Another lady had a whole bag full of kerchiefs, Eastern European lady. And she came in and just barged right to the front. I mean, rude as can be, by the way. Just elbows into everybody she had to put elbows into to get to the front, to kneel down. And just one at a time, she'd take these kerchiefs out and just rub them on this piece of rock and then put them in a different bag. And she went through the whole thing, just got them all rubbed. All right, these all have power now. I'm going to take them home to my friends or whatever.
No way.
That is so foreign to me, man.
She was manufacturing like Jesus handkerchiefs to give people. Dude, that is so strange.
Does that feel like a different religion than what you practice?
that feels like what you do to trick people. Is what that feels like.
Yeah, it does to me too.
She was rude.
Oh my goodness. We need to come back to your comment about tricking people, because this trip is affecting me, and I'm okay with processing it here, I think. We went to Bethlehem, and that's, I guess, in Palestine. We went to the Church of the Nativity, because that's where Jesus is supposed to have been born. And it's a site that is a pretty good tradition that church that was built in the 4th century is on exactly the spot where there was no room at the inn and Jesus had to go out and be born in a stable, right? And so the manger and the site of his birth is right under the altar of this church. I mean, this church is built in the 4th century. They weren't anticipating hundreds of people wanting to go to it at once, but that's exactly what happened. So the whole place fills up with this big, enormous line of people who want to crowd into this cave that has a tiny little cave, hobbit-sized entrance underneath the altar, underneath the stage, if you will. Can you picture that?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one Eastern Orthodox priest who used folding chairs to hold back the pushing crowd, and then he was trying to just let a few through at a time. And so there were kind of like two lines.
Like a concert? Like a mosh pit, a concert kind of thing?
Yeah. Except it got insaner than that. So there were kind of two lines that were being zipper merged together, but nobody's queuing up. It's just insane. And so we've got somebody who's in charge, has us in this other line. We didn't even really want to go, but you kind of just get into this cattle chute and you end up there and we're like, oh, what the heck? And so he's trying to send us through. And so
hold on, wait. I need this mental image
sure.
to be more solidified. So I'm picturing a small building, a rickety old building. I'm thinking mud walls or something like that.
No, it's a big church that's been expanded upon through the centuries like 4 times. It's a good-sized church.
Okay, so we're talking stone walls then.
Bigger than your church where you meet on a Sunday morning.
Okay. And like this is, I'm thinking European architecture, really large stone pillars and walls and stuff like that. Okay, and so I've got 2 lines. Where are they going to? Are they going to?
They're all going to the right side, the chapel on the right side of the high altar. So you know how churches back then all had the shape of a cross?
Right.
If you look down on them from above.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the upper right quadrant of the negative space around the cross.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep,
and we've all been filtered along the longest beam of the cross, the vertical beam. So we've all been filtered in the lower right quadrant through the lower right quadrant.
We're trying to go touch the manger area or something?
I guess. I mean, apparently some monks, some Franciscans made like a silver star and put it down there in some rock, and you can go touch it and it has power or something. I don't know. I don't even care. Like, whatever. Jesus was born somewhere. I'm pretty sure he definitely existed, and therefore he was born probably somewhere in Bethlehem, because why would you lie about that? And so we're all trying to follow the rules, or we are at any rate. And the priest comes and moves one folding chair and invites my family through. We're up next, I guess. And so we go through, and then some people start to get real fidgety in the other merging lane. And I could just see them mentally snap, and a few people pushed through the other folding chairs, and it was on, man. Like, people just it got loud. People started going nuts. The priest is yelling in, I don't know if it was, I couldn't even tell what he was saying. And I got separated from the girls. So Camilla and the girls saw what was happening, and she astutely pulled them back and was like, hey, we're out. And I was like, okay, we'll join you. But I couldn't, because there's this crush of pilgrims who are willing to engage in any amount of pushing necessary to see where Jesus was born. And my 7-year-old son and I get pushed up against this stone wall by this little hobbit entrance that's down 3 stairs beneath everything. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to put my feet. So I'm doing...
Can we just time out for a second?
Yeah, okay.
So we're talking about, I'm doing air quotes, Christians? Like, these are Christian people coming to see a place where Jesus was born.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the very worst things I can imagine from an Alabama LSU football game at the end of the game when everybody's drunk and LSU won and they're being mean to us. That's what I'm envisioning in my head.
You're not wrong.
Really?
I've been to some insane rock shows, and this rivaled that, except I'd never bring my 7-year-old to an insane rock show. Bottom line, I end up putting my feet right at the base of the wall, my hands against the wall, and I'm shielding my son between my body and the wall, doing a push-up against the wall, trying to hold these people back. And there's too many of them. Like, I'm just not physically strong enough to push back on that crush of people. So I'm turning my head over my shoulder while I'm trying to protect my kid, and I'm yelling at people. I'm like, hey, just back off. And they don't speak English, and they don't care. They're trying to see where Jesus was born. Screw you, man. You know my son. He's not weak. He's just happy. He's just always, always happy. And I looked down, and I just saw legit fear in his eyes, man.
Dude, I don't want any part of this. I want nothing to do with any of that.
No kidding.
If I were a non-believer and you were to be like, hey, you want to go see where Jesus was born? And I went and I saw that, I'd be like, I will remain a non-believer now.
Let me take it a step further. If I was a believer who had gone to seminary and been a pastor for a really long time and was a pastor's kid and had gone through a process of faith and losing faith and coming back to faith and deciding that from here on out I'm just going to be honest about whatever is going on in my struggle and ups and downs of faith, if I were that guy, which I guess I am, that would be very troubling to me in my faith. And it was very troubling to me. It bothered me. It stuck with me. It's still sticking with me.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I don't think there's not a God now because people behaved like morons, but it was gross. Like, it just felt like the Jesus who flipped over a bunch of tables and was mad because people were prostituting out the temple in Jerusalem. It just seemed like he wouldn't dig that. And I know...
That's one of my favorite stories, by the way. Jesus tossing temple tables.
Part of the irony of it to me was like, if you all are here and you know why this place is regarded as significant by many people, then you also know it's been here for 2,000 years and will therefore very likely be here 5 minutes from now. It occurred to no one to just make a single file line and just walk through and look at, like, why would we do it this way? But beyond that, the thing that stuck with me was that there was theology in play there. Theology really does affect what people do.
I'm not tracking.
Okay, for me, my theology says, I don't really need to go down there in that hole, but whatever, I got curtailed into this line. I'm up here already. I guess I might as well. But if not, whatever. For someone who comes at Christianity a little differently, like, that's where the power is. I need to be down there because that's the thin spot between the physical world and the other world, and I'm this close to it, and I can feel it, and I want that, and I need that to deal with whatever it is that I'm dealing with in my life, and I got to get to that thin spot. I need the closeness of God. I get the impulse. I just don't want you to crowd murder my 7-year-old while you're at it. But there's a theological assumption that they're making that informed their behavior, and there's a theological assumption that I'm making that informed my casualness that was probably driving them crazy. So yeah, I feel grossed out by it.
That's pretty deep, man. I don't think you can say... I disagree with you, man. I understand at the base level they've got to get to that thin spot, right, in their minds. But I think, to me, this sounds like lizard brain, hive mind, crowd mentality taking over is what this sounds like to me.
Yeah, you're not wrong. In fact, I don't know. I think we're both right, because I think the hive mind took over, but the hive mind wouldn't have taken over were it not for certain theological assumptions.
Have you ever read C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity? Obviously you have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I don't know
That's
why
okay.
I asked you that. There's this thing that he talks about in the book where he talks about when somebody breaks in front of you in line.
I don't remember it.
It's either that or it's in Screw Tape Letters. I can't remember what book it's in. But anyway, he says, when someone breaks in front of you in line, it's because they're being selfish. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And he said, but if you truly weren't selfish yourself, you wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't even care because you would want them in front of you. And I was like, that sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's saying that same little feeling where you get ticked off when somebody cuts in front of you or your family, that feeling, it exists because you are just as selfish as the person that cut in front of you. And that has stuck with me every time someone cuts in front of me in line. It's just such a deep feeling, you know? I mean, you have a better argument here because they were trying to crowd murder you.
Which I'm against.
Yeah, I'm against you getting crowd murdered.
I would say the net of all of this, even as I sit here and factor in what you just said with the psychology or spirituality of being cut on in line, is that it took an otherwise pretty cool experience and just ended it on a very gross note that made it much easier for me to sympathize with people who look at what I believe from a distance and just say, it's just yucky stuff comes out of it and I don't want anything to do with it.
Dude, I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, well, there's a counterbalance to it, though.
No, I really am. This is a deep thing. I mean, I'm hyper sorry that happened to you because I know what all this stuff means to you. I remember all the conversations we've had for the last however many years when you were trying to piece together the geography and what it all means and all that.
Yeah.
I also know you don't believe that these physical spots mean anything, but it's still really cool when you get to see it. I saw your video where you went and looked at Paul's jail cell, and I saw your eyes light up with how excited you were because of history and all this stuff. So I'm really sorry this happened to you, dude. On behalf of humanity.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you, humanity. What I care about is, if you watch one of my videos, you know, one of the things that I'll always bring up is how the original audience would have heard this passage of the Bible or any ancient document. And for me, the treat of going to the places where the Bible happened is you can just picture it a tiny bit better. You don't have to go to Israel to understand the Bible. There are jillions of people who are going to get it way better than me who are never going to go there. But for me, it was just kind of helpful to be like, oh, okay, so if you're standing here, this is what you're looking at. Okay, I can picture that a little better. Oh, if you're writing the Bible from this jail cell, that's your only source of light, and how it'd be cold down here. Oh, I get why he said that now. Okay, I get it a little better. For me, going to these places doesn't further mystify the religion and the sacred texts. For me, going there demystifies it and helps me to get why they wrote it the way they wrote it, why people responded the way they responded. And it takes some of the weird after-the-fact bonus meanings that we apply to it from half a world away. It scrapes those away. And even if I don't like the results, I feel like I can just picture it better. And there was none of that to be had in that insane Church of the Nativity incident. There's nothing there for me to look at and be like, oh, I can picture how the shepherds and Joseph must have felt now because this is all. No, it's all. There's a giant church built over the top of it. And then another one built over the top of that. And now I'm here with angry Eastern Europeans who are trying to kill my kid on accident. Like, it just, there's no benefit to what I like and what I'm there to get out of it. I have to add that caveat.
Next question, Kyle Knight, which is K_nighttime with a K, asks, what was a cultural similarity that you experienced that surprised you? Also, what was the oldest structure you got to visit?
Those are both good questions. Cultural similarity. The driving was really similar. A lot of the same common sense, social niceties, and agreed upon aggression level on the country roads and in the cities.
What do the stop signs look like?
They got like a hand and an octagon. At least I hope those were stop signs. I can't say for sure. I may have been stopping at a lot of weird places. We rented a car instead of doing the tour thing. I feel like to get to know a place, I want to drive around it until I don't need a map. And I wanted to drive around, especially the Sea of Galilee, all around in the hills and in the country until I felt like I really get this. Again, for the purposes I said earlier about understanding the text and all of that stuff better. So the driving I felt like was pretty similar. Just doing business was pretty similar in terms of the basic niceties of a transaction.
What was the money? What was the currency, I guess I should say?
It's a new Israeli shekel.
Yeah?
The economy's a little weird there, man. I think there's some artificial forces at work that keep things a little bit pricey.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, what would it look like for you to ship something to Israel in bulk from somewhere other than the United States?
What do you mean? Like like a pallet of something, or?
Well, I don't know. Let's say you have a bunch of oil and you're in, I don't know, Pakistan, and you really are like, you know what? We should do business with Israel. We're going to send it there. How are you going to get that oil there?
I guess trucks over land. Wait a second.
See what I'm
Hold
saying?
on. Yeah, because you'd have to go through. Who borders them to the east?
Jordan is a pretty agreeable neighbor.
Yeah. Then you got Syria to the north.
Yeah. I mean, at any given time, though, you've got a whole lot of nations who have friction with Israel for maybe reasons that are fair, maybe reasons that are unfair. I don't care. I'm not going there. But the point is, we can agree there's a ton of friction there. And the ideology of most of what surrounds the nation of Israel is not super pro-Israel. I mean, ranging all the way to like pretty mad at Israel. And so if you're an outsider and you want to get stuff there, well, I mean, if you get it in through the Mediterranean, maybe then it's somewhat affordable. But otherwise, you've got to use canals owned by people who are probably going to want to charge a hefty fee if it's going to Israel. I don't know. Like the politics, I think, are just so old, and there's rivalry and tension, and it feels like it's so entangled and complex that weird things cost a lot of money.
But you're implying there's artificial inflation.
I wouldn't even say inflation. I would just say artificial costs associated with tariff, or, you know, if we started Earth over and there were no political frictions, the most obvious routes to deliver things to that part of the world are the ones you would take. But right now, I'm guessing you can't always take the most obvious routes to ship things to Israel. So weird stuff is expensive. I don't know. It's kind of odd that way.
So what was the oldest structure that you got to visit?
Oh, man. Okay. Well, the Western Wall is super old. I mean, that's that's Herod's upgrades to the location of...
Is that the one where you go up and I've seen on, I guess it was news photos and stuff, people would pray at that wall and they'd roll up little scroll prayers and put them in the wall?
Yeah.
Did you do that?
I did go and pray there. Yeah, I took my son. I tried to take my daughters, and I just, again, don't speak Hebrew, so I guess I missed the memo that I can't take girls to that side. It's segregated by sex. So Camilla and the girls had to go to the other side and pray over there with all the women, and I took the boy, and we went and prayed. It was a pretty neat moment. He didn't really get it. I was like, this is a place where people pray, and it's special to a lot of them. We don't have to pray here, but we're going to. Who should we pray for? And he just listed off very thoughtfully all kinds of people. He's such a kind, gentle, think outside himself little heart. So we prayed for people that he cares about. It was cool.
That's cool. Did you roll something up and like put it in the wall?
Did I roll something? What? No.
No, I just see people rolling up pieces of paper.
No, I didn't, but the kid didn't know what those were for, so he was picking at them while I was praying, and I was like, what are you doing, dude? These are all in here, Daddy. Oh, we need to put those back. So we put other people's prayers back in the wall.
Well, you know, that means there's some guy that has to come collect all those, right?
I would guess it's just a shop vac after hours. I don't know for sure, but there's got to be a strategy.
We're not allowed to say this, man. We're offending people right now.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm stopping. So that's a wall of the temple complex. I think the only one left from when Titus and Vespasian invaded and destroyed the temple in 70 AD. The Romans got mad about a rebellion and they busted up the temple. And so that has a lot of importance to the Jewish people, I guess. But we saw stuff older than that. Like the city of David, that part of Jerusalem is outside the walls of Jerusalem that you see now. It's all archaeological stuff. And that's like 11th century BC. So that's pretty dang old.
You stayed somewhere one night that was super old.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, in Akko, we stayed just inside the Turkish walls that were built in front of the old Crusader walls. So the Turkish walls are like, I don't know, 17th century maybe. But just inside there, a lot of the old buildings are still left. We stayed in a place that went up about the time of Jesus, almost 2,000-year-old apartment. And it'd been renovated, but all the original stones are still there. Mortar had been redone and some additions had been made. But the owner took us through. He's like, this is the shape of the original structure, and this one of the two rooms is It's a couple thousand years old. Oh,
Dude, that's crazy.
yeah, we gave him a real good review.
I'm trying to think of a door, for example. I've stayed places in Cooper Pedy, Australia, comes to mind.
Opaltown.
Yeah, it was carved out of the dirt, right? And so doors would have these headers over the top of them that were made of wood, and you'd have dirt, columns and walls and things like that. So what kind of headers did they have in these really old buildings? Were they stone?
There were vaults and arches inside. That's how it was all done.
So there's like no seismic activity at all.
Oh, there is. And it's just a roulette game. Like, where were we? That just kept getting destroyed by earthquakes. Well, the Church of the Nativity had been earthquaked a couple of times. But that's really why things go away. Because fire doesn't burn those old stone structures. I mean, the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a good percentage of those got wrecked by earthquakes. And, you have a building that's 3,000 years old, somewhere along the line, that's probably going to happen. So whatever the case, enough of this was still intact. And there were wide, low arches, like head height even for a short guy, and then maybe like 12 feet across with huge stones. And then, that all-important capstone sitting in there holding the pressure from each side. Those were how the doors were.
So do you get the impression that, that's a 3,000-year-old structure? No, a 2,000-year-old structure you've been in. Mm-hmm. Do you get the impression that people have gotten larger over time?
I don't get the impression. That's a fact. That's a weird thing. Charlemagne, who was Holy Roman Emperor he was crowned December 25th, 800 AD, right? I think that's right. Yeah. So we know that he was considered to be just a freak of a man, and he was 6 foot something. He was considered to be like Goliath in proportions.
Really?
People in the Middle Ages they just weren't big. And the Romans back in the day weren't big, and we can tell that by the standard, the average sarcophagus size. So people have gotten bigger. It just, I don't know. I guess I drew the short straw on that aspect of human evolution.
All right, so here we go. 2 really good questions.
All right.
Here's one from Tanner Roberson. That's at Tan E. Roberson. He says, knowing how Matt loves Rome, how would he compare the 2 ancient geographic areas in regard to his personal feelings? Meaning, knowing that he may have walked in the very same ground where Jesus walked, did this have any geographic or area more importance? Hold on, let me. It looks like he ran out of characters.
Okay, I think I'm tracking.
Did this give this geographic area a more deep meaning for him personally than Rome?
They're just different. That's a great question. The stuff that I like about Rome has to do with a different orbit of history. So this stuff happens in an area the size of modern-day Chicagoland in the 1st century AD, and Christianity happens. Again, love it, hate it, it happened, and it spread and transformed the Roman Empire. And it moves into this new orbit where Rome controls, the Mediterranean world and the rest of Europe. And so there's so much history in Rome that involves secular history and then the mingling of church and state, usually for negative or neutral at best effect. And so I'm really interested in that story when I'm there. But in Israel, the story I was really interested in was the foundations of Christianity. Where did Jesus hang out? And especially, I enjoyed getting back into the super deep Old Testament stuff. I think those were my favorite sites, because the pilgrims don't care about Old Testament stuff nearly as much. There aren't Catholic churches built over the top of them. No gripes with Catholics. It was just nice to see a few of these places where I could picture it because there wasn't a church there. And so I guess just going to empty hillsides and giant wildernesses in Israel and filling in some of the gaps in my mental images of these things was fun, but a very different exercise than going and looking at like the Colosseum or the Forum or that's where Caesar got stabbed. I don't know. I like Rome better. Rome's my favorite city. It's my favorite aspect of history. I'll go back yet again as soon as I'm able to. This was meaningful. It was just different.
Okay, so
let me ask you a question real quick. Have you been to Rome?
No, I haven't.
Which of the 2 would you rather go to?
Rome, without a doubt.
Really?
But I would want to go to Pompeii on that same trip. I know it's quite the drive.
No, it's not bad.
That's really where I want to go. I want to go to Pompeii because it's like this snapshot of an actual moment in history. And that fascinates me.
It's neat. It's eerie. There are some places that do that a little bit in Israel. Masada had a similar feel to Pompeii.
That's the fort up on top of the hill, right?
Yeah, you know all this stuff. Nice job.
Whatever. I'm going to pound through several of these questions. Is that
okay,
cool
pound
with you?
through it. Yeah, cool.
I mean, there's a bunch of really good ones, and I think it would be fun because you've given us some really deep like introspection and stuff like that. But
I see what you're doing.
Is that the right word?
I see what you're doing. You're doing the give us the quick version so we can move through some more of these. Yes, I understand. I will honor that. Let's do it.
James Macon Stuff is his Twitter handle. If he could serve one meal he had on his trip to his friends back home, which one would it be and why?
Golly, that's great.
Isn't that cool?
There was a KFC in Bethlehem.
Really?
And no. No.
Oh. Well, dude, the first place I ate in Ecuador and Germany was a KFC.
Oh, crazy. No, we did not go to KFC at all. There's a restaurant called the Shepherd's Tent in Palestine that backs up to what is traditionally believed to be the field where the shepherds who were watching over their flocks at night got told to go and check out Jesus being born. No idea if there's any validity to that tradition, but what I do know is that restaurant was great. It was, I don't even know. It was, how do you describe it? It had like fabric everywhere, fabric hanging from the ceiling, and you lounged on like couches, and the food came out real slow, and everybody but our family, hit the hookah before you started to eat, and it was just amazing food. So yeah, definitely.
I've got a story about a hookah.
Tell me.
So this is a long time ago. It was in 2001. It was about September 20th, 2001. Do the math.
Oh, so okay. Math done.
So we were studying for final exams, and I was studying with my friends, Ehab and Osama. Not joking here. And this was the same time that, I don't know if you remember, but there was this, no, this was later in the year. This wasn't September 20th. What am I talking about? We were studying for exams. It had been the end of the year. Anyway, You remember when they found that video of Osama bin Laden talking about how the towers fell?
Yeah.
Well, I was sitting in this guy's apartment. His name was Osama. We were studying together, and he said, hey, go in there and get you something to drink. So I went in there to get something to drink. I opened up the cabinet, and there was a hookah there. I was like, dude, you should not be smoking this stuff, dude. He's like, smoking what? I was like, look, it's a bong here. He goes, no, dude, that's not a bong. That's a hookah. I was like, look, dude, I'm country come to town. What's the difference in a bong and a hookah? I have no idea. He's like,
I mean, the principle's similar.
He's like, come here, I'll show you. And so he got tobacco, and he fired up the hookah. He offered some to me. I said, no, thank you. I should have done it looking back, just have a moment with Osama. I said, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
They say one hit and you're addicted to hookah for life. You did the right thing. I might be thinking of meth. Maybe it's meth.
Well, he breathed in on the hookah and, the bubbles and all that stuff. And then when he breathed out, the smoke was so thick, it muffled his voice. It was funny. It was really funny. Anyway, but we were sitting there studying, and then the video came on of Osama bin Laden talking about how the towers fell. And Ehab and Osama were sitting there watching it in Arabic. They were listening to it in their native tongue, and I was listening to the translator, and I looked at him, and I was like, Osama, is that what he's saying? And he was doing all the math in his head. He goes, yeah, dude, that's what he's saying. This guy's crazy.
Whoa.
And so I watched the interpretation of Osama bin Laden's words via not only Fox News or CNN or whatever was on then, but through the eyes and ears of my friend Osama, who had a muffled voice because of the hookah. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
I thought it was really neat. It's a memory I'll cherish forever. Okay, Joe Valenza at Trollenza is his Twitter handle, says, and I love the way he says this, what are people like over there? It's a deep question asked in a very simple way.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that.
They got stuff to do. Everybody's going somewhere. The busyness level seemed similar to where I live or what I'm used to in the United States. I did have a couple of interesting encounters. On more than one occasion, I got thanked for being an American.
What?
Yeah, this is going to get into the politics of it, and I don't even know. I'm not doing the politics of it. What I know is that it started at the Sea of Galilee. A lady suspected I was an American. She was an older woman, and she came over. Her English wasn't perfect, but she said, my family and I are Russian Jews. Are you an American? Or she said, are you an American? Yes. My family and I are Russian Jews, and I just wanted to say thank you. I was like, I have never done anything. I'm sorry. Like, I would love to accept that. I've never done anything. And she said, no, just know a lot of people say a lot of things about America, but my family will always be so grateful to all Americans. Thank you.
Really?
And I did not press it. I just said, I feel uncomfortable saying you're welcome. And she said, that's okay. And then she just walked away. And that was it. I don't know what that meant. Another gal came up and said, I don't know if you like your president or not. I don't care. I don't need to know your opinion of your president. But thank you for being a friend to us. And I said, I'm sorry. She's like, oh, you're an American? Yes, I'm an American. Thank you for being a friend to us. I was like, okay. And then I also had a really friendly interaction with a couple of Palestinians who engaged with me on that point. And I think obviously there are a lot of Palestinians who wish that the United States were more supportive of their perspective on the whole issue. But it was a couple of Palestinian Christians who engaged on it just a little bit. And their remark, and I'm going to butcher it, but their remark was something to the effect of, what we have in common in our faith is bigger than these tensions that we feel in the world. It's something like that. That's not how they said it, but that was their point. And so I thought it was interesting that I had 4 different people who, just out of the blue, were like, let's go straight into the deep water. I have something to say to you because of what country I think you're from. And that's a small enough sample size, it could be an inaccurate reflection of the reality, but it struck me as interesting. So maybe I'd say, what are people like? Maybe there's a touch of sobriety. All I can say is I was impressed. I thought people were friendly when it made sense to be friendly, doing their own thing when it made sense to do their own thing. Everybody was willing to help when I obviously needed help. And I have nothing but positive to say about the Israelis and Palestinians.
That's interesting. The only negative experiences were with pilgrims.
Yes,
true?
Absolutely.
When I was in Iceland, they said they didn't like the tourists because they would always get into wrecks from looking at the waterfalls.
I bet they have like a 17-syllable single word to describe that phenomenon in Iceland.
Okay, next question by Aaron, at @AaronOP_. Most incredible sight?
The view from the top of Masada was pretty dang cool. It was really meaningful surveying the Sea of Galilee from the Mount of the Beatitudes, where Jesus is purported to have done his ultra-famous Sermon on the Mount. I mean, even people who don't know anything about the Bible or aren't into Christianity, like there's 50 phrases in your vernacular that are from that sermon that Jesus gave. It's that kind of famous. And we're pretty sure we know where that happened. It was neat to get up there and take in just this beautiful Sea of Galilee view. And it's weird because you're on a mountain, but you're still below sea level too. So there's just a lot of trippy things about that spot.
You're on a mountain, but you're below sea level. At the Sea of Galilee?
Yeah, the Sermon on the Mount.
I thought that was just the Dead Sea.
No, the Sea of... That whole Jordan... I don't know if it's a rift valley or what that geologic feature is. But that whole Jordan River Valley, north to south, that started up at what used to be called, I think, Lake Hula, but is like gone. Like that whole stretch is below sea level. And the Sea of Galilee is not a little bit below sea level. It really sits down pretty deep. Tiberias is mostly below sea level. That's the big town on the Sea of Galilee. So it's weird that the Sermon on the Mount is below the ocean.
Okay, Chris Jackson asked a question that is complemented well by Wade Glass. So Chris is at Random Sleeper. He asks, how was the food? And Wade Glass, which is at Uncle_Wave, asks, any Montezuma's revenge?
I don't know if Montezuma has been to Israel. No, we all did great on that aspect of it. I don't know. The food was all right. My least favorite kind of food, ethnically in the world, is Indian food, and my second least favorite would be Mediterranean food. It's just not my thing, not my style.
Oh,
but I
dude,
ate it
I
all
love it.
anyway and tried everything that was put in front of me. You know, that's what you do when you travel, right? It's not what I would want to eat for the rest of my life, but if I was raised on it, I'm sure it would be my favorite thing ever, and it would just be yummy. I just love that flatbread. You can throw anything in there and it tastes pretty dang good. It's baked fresh and they bring it out in that big bowl. So I'll miss that. Okay, you asked me a whole bunch of questions from listeners. I want to bounce one off of you that came up in the r/NDQ discussion subreddit, and I have it right here. This is from, hey, sweet, hockey fan _52. I can relate. It just says, on Patreon, what does per podcast conversation mean? And it goes on to clarify, I'm new to Patreon. It says the pledges are per podcast conversation. Does that mean per episode? Destin, you get to respond to a question now.
Yeah, basically there's two ways that Patreon sets support. So you can either support someone on Patreon per month, or you can do it per conversation. And we set the Patreon page up way back in the day for per conversation. And we did that on purpose because we wanted the support to be directly related to how much content we produced. We thought that was the best way to do it. But also, one thing that's important to note is you can go into your Patreon account and you can set a monthly balance, because if you're, doing what you're supposed to be doing with your money and budgeting, you can go in there and determine how much you want to allocate for each creator that you support. So, yes, it's per podcast episode. And so if we did 5 podcasts in 1 month, which I don't think we would never do that. That would be 5 different support increments. But typically we do 2, occasionally we do 3 per month. That's about right, par for the course, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we're going for. I think we did exactly 50. I think we did exactly 26 in our first 52 weeks.
Okay. So, yeah, that's what that means. One thing, this is the comment I interacted with, I believe.
The thread popped just a little bit. Like, people had thoughts and it was really positive and kind of helped clarify how Patreon works, which I think that's a good thing, because it was kind of weird the first time I jumped on there and was like, I'm going to go buy content on the internet that I care about, like straight from the people who make it. This is kind of new and different.
Yeah, Patreon is a goodwill engine, and man, it's really cool. I mean, everybody that does that, you just know that they're doing it because they like what we're doing and they get the bigger picture. I don't know, it's cool.
Yeah, it means a lot to us. Patreon.com/NDQ. Same deal as always. If you're into that kind of thing, or if you're in a place where supporting us makes sense, like, that's really kind, and thank you. If you're not, holy cow, no sweat. Thank you
You're
for
here
being
listening.
here and listening to
That's
this.
awesome.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you here. All right, now we got all sappy and over serious. Let's go back to talking about other stuff, huh?
I wonder if people can carve out things and not support the bidet comments on Patreon.
Well, come on. No. I'm sorry. It's part and parcel. You support this program, you support my bidet advocacy as well. I will not be dissuaded.
Here's one from Peter J. Jones at GayNerd53. Says, maybe a weird question, but would a visit to Israel be worth it to an atheist? Is it a good trip purely for historical context without having to believe one religious or philosophical perspective?
If you are astute enough to ask that question, it would be a great trip for you. Just by the way, it was Peter, right?
Yeah.
Just by the way Peter asked that question, I can tell that he understands that whether you like the things that made the world or not, the world is what the world is, and if you want to understand it, it's like a present waiting to be unwrapped.
I don't think you meant the way that came out. Whether you like the way the world... What'd you say? Like the things that made the world?
Yeah, like, for example, there are aspects of history that I'm really not crazy about. Like, I don't like what certain people thought. I don't like what they did.
Oh, you're talking about like the Crusades and stuff.
Well, like, for example, I really don't like communism, and I really didn't like its effect on the 20th century, but I still really want to understand communism. It's still really important history, and I want to get it, and I want to understand how it made the world the way it is today. So I respect that Peter, as an atheist, is thinking outside himself and saying, I'd love to learn the history and all of this stuff because it's very important history. So yeah, I would go. I maybe would avoid some of the pilgrimage sites. That won't be a ton of fun for you. But the other reason I'd go, like all of the history, all of the religion aside, the geography of this place is nuts, dude. Have you ever looked closely at just a topographical map of Israel or anything like that?
No, it's always been 2D in my brain.
That's fair.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Mostly the little Bible maps that you see.
Okay, the ones in the back of the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Bright, vivid colors. Yeah, okay. You know how America's absurdly diverse. If you do a great big giant cross-country road trip, you see like all the kinds of world there can be. Israel is the same way, except it's all crammed into, again, an area the size of Chicago. They've got, down at Eliot, which I did not get to, and I'm not sure I'm saying right, they've got like beautiful saltwater snorkeling. If you go all the way to the north at Mount Hermon, they've got a full ski resort. You can go straight up skiing up there.
Like snow skiing?
Yes. It's incredible.
In Israel?
Yeah, they've got a couple mountain ranges.
Natural snow?
A lot of natural snow, and I'm sure they supplement. But, I mean, Mount Hermon is tall. You go from sea level to, I don't know, I bet it's 9,000-ish feet. Yeah, I think it's a pretty legit mountain. And then the Dead Sea is like Badlands and the Grand Canyon kind of wadded up into one. But what's nuts is you're there on the Dead Sea and you feel like you are in, like you would be hundreds of miles from civilization if you were in the Western U.S. and you saw land like that. But as the crow flies, it's like 15 miles and you're in Jerusalem. It's like the diversity of the U.S. crammed into this tiny little space, even if you went for the natural features. I got to think of the name. Ein Gedi. There is this oasis as you're dropping down into the Dead Sea through the Badlands, where in the Bible, supposedly David went and hid there from Saul. You remember when Saul was taking a deuce in that cave?
Oh, yeah, and he came and like cut off a piece of his, I don't know, like what was his tunic or something?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
As he was taking a deuce?
Yeah, which is impressive.
That is. That's sneaky level 5 or something. That's good.
Yeah. So David, with his sneakcraft there, was doing so in this amazing, like, carved out of the rock wall oasis, vertical oasis with like multiple waterfalls that come down out of this cleft. I mean, it's just beautiful, but in the middle of nothing. The diversity is just incredible. So if I'm Peter and I'm an atheist, I would think it'd be worth going just to get in that much planet Earth in such a small area.
That's cool. That's a good question.
That's a good question.
All right, we've got one from Mechanical Engineering IRL in real life. It's at MECENGIRL. And his question is, he said the Dead Sea tasted terrible, but how did it feel?
It felt like water with just maybe a little bit of flour mixed into it. Slick flour. Skin felt so weird after that.
Like you had a coating on you when you got out?
No. It just felt like as good as my skin could ever be. I don't know, it wore off after a day or so, but it was phenomenal. I just walked around feeling my arm all the time. Yeah, it was weird. You looked young getting up and out of that water. And I mean, we rubbed mud all over ourselves and everything, and that was fun. But dude, you could not drown in that water if you wanted to.
What do you mean? Because you were so buoyant?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't understand.
So it's like the perfect place to learn how to swim, except for the taste?
No, you can't swim. Like, you can't maneuver. It's, what can I compare it to?
Okay, so like if you're standing straight up,
okay,
like you could stand straight up in the water and your nipples would be out of the water.
That's about what it comes to.
No way.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. Your nipples are really saggy and hang super low. So for you,
they do,
maybe
yes.
not.
Well, the left one is, further down than the right
one. Well, and the third
yeah.
one on your back might be visible.
Dude, you're not supposed to.
We can edit that out. It's fine. We'll remember to cut it. Just
okay, sure.
Here. Okay, just
Tina,
note where
cut the part about the third nipple.
The third nipple. Cool. Good. But yeah, you just, you sit there and you bob. It's so bizarre. But have you ever gone like inner tubing down a river or stream or something?
I live in Alabama, dude.
I don't know what that means. I was there in the spring and all it did was rain the entire time.
Is a frog's butt watertight?
Are we really back to water in butts?
That means yes.
Oh, okay.
That means yes. Go ahead.
So you know how sometimes, like, if you kind of fall down with your butt into that tube, and you got your little beetle arms and legs sticking out, and you get wobbly, it can be hard to, get right. It's like that the whole time that you're in the Dead Sea. Like you just never feel properly oriented, and you can't really lay on your tummy and swim. It kind of wants to roll you over. And if you want to put your face in the water and just chug it to drown, just to prove me wrong that you could drown, good luck. You're going to puke after like one tiny sip.
That's weird.
It is horrible.
I would like to try that.
It's neat.
Okay, 2 more questions that I want to ask. The first one is from Vallyn. That's VALLYNN. That's a neat name. Her Twitter handle is @VALL_OTQ.
That is a neat
she
name.
asked, how do they say Israel in Israel?
Oh, I don't know. I could make something up to try and sound like a sophisticated traveler, but here's the thing, Valen. I would be lying and faking it, and everyone who knows would know. I don't know. They said it, and I'm sure it sounded right to them.
Here's one from Justin Hunt at JCHUNDT. He asked, please describe the smells you encountered. No picture or video can communicate this type of information.
Wow. These are all so good.
I know. And it was just like one tweet. I just said, please tell me stuff to ask Matt. These are fantastic.
I'm going to answer that question, but first, thank you, everybody, because this is still fresh in my mind. And if you hadn't asked these questions, I wouldn't have been able to recall this stuff. It's like coming out of a dream. This is making me think of stuff I wouldn't have noted. Okay. In the old city of Jerusalem, it would smell like a little bit of sweat and sunscreen because there are so many people around in some of the crowded areas. It would smell a little bit like a mixture of all the food booths and everything that were in this, because it's like a tight old school market for a lot of this old city of Jerusalem stuff. And then there were certain alleys where I would walk down it and there was like kind of this sweet smell. And I knew that it had something to do with food, but I wasn't quite sure what. And so it would go from grossing me out to being kind of interesting and back in a matter of just a few steps. And ultimately I was so conflicted by this sweet but possibly poop smell that I was like, I just can't be here anymore. Because I don't want to accidentally like the smell of poop, and it could be poop, but this might also be food. Kind of smells good. I need to go. I'm feeling really weird in my heart. I never figured it out. I kept sneaking back by there because there were several streets that kind of had that same aroma, and I don't know what I was smelling. I think it was probably something bad.
Okay, I said you were only going to get 2 more questions, but I just scrolled to the bottom here, and I found a couple of really good ones.
Okay, rock and fire.
Nikolai Solis at NEEKOSOLIS says, did he feel a presence or something greater by being there?
I felt a better understanding of the words that are written on the pages of the Bible and preserved through time at a couple of points. No. In fact, I pulled my kids aside really early in the thing, and we had a great talk about what we believe and why. And one of the things that came out of that discussion was one of my daughters saying, we believe God is everywhere, right? I'm like, yep, that's correct. So he's not more here than other places, right? It's like, that is what we believe. She was like, okay, well, I still like it. And I think her comments sum up how I felt. I didn't go looking for a mystical experience. I did not have a mystical experience while I was there, but I feel like I learned a lot and I met cool people. And honestly, we haven't really touched on this, but one of the biggest, most meaningful things that I took from it were just, I live in a part of the world where I just never interact with Muslims. And every interaction I had with a Muslim was wonderful. We were honest with each other. We bounced questions off each other. I had a really great conversation with a dude who made my lunch. And I asked him if we could talk. We took a little walk while my family sat there, and he showed me things that he liked in Accra, and we talked to each other. It was really meaningful. It was nice to get outside of my my normal social circles and learn stuff about others.
One thing that was interesting to me, the way you answered that, is you said your daughter asked, "Is this what we believe?" That's interesting. She kind of just believes what you tell her to believe?
I wondered if you would highlight that. I certainly have a huge role in shaping my kids, right?
Yeah, I do it differently. I say, this is what I believe, but you need to figure out what you believe. That's how I do it.
Sure. But my kids have been around me talking about theology in the general sense of Christianity enough that when she asked that, she was saying like the Christian position. She wouldn't use those words because she's a kid.
I see.
Like the Christian position would be God is everywhere, right? But
okay, I
said
see. So it's not like, Dad, will you please spoon feed me what I believe about this thing personally? Okay, I see.
No, I push them pretty hard to keep it from being that way.
Okay, and let's end on this because there were tons of people that asked about food, but I see her pop up all the time in the Twitter feed, and this is Mary Bradley, at Bradley Girl.
Yeah, I see her pop up a lot too. Cool.
Yeah, she said, what was the best food or place that you ate at?
Okay, I really like that shepherd's tent. The first night we ate at a place on the sea and we didn't know how to do anything. We were not in a tourist neighborhood. No one spoke English. So we were eating right on the Mediterranean. This was in Joppa, or I'm sorry, they call it Yaffo. So we came in and we're like, is there somewhere we can sit? And they're like, oh, yeah. And they just directed us somewhere. We sat down and we were like, well, let's look at a menu. And they start bringing stuff out. I've never eaten in the Middle East before. They bring out a big bowl of bread and then, I kid you not, 20 plus little dishes. This is unsolicited, mind you. Little dishes of stuff to dip the bread in. I mean, the hummus I recognized, and there was some kind of little corn thing, and I don't even know what all the other stuff was. I was like, is this just how meals are here? I mean, I just got off the plane. Well, let's just eat it all. So we just dipped that bread and everything and tried it out, and I'm glad we had the experience. It was pretty cool.
How much was it? How much did you pay for a 20-course meal? Or 20?
Yeah, that one was north of $100. We didn't mean to do that. That's not something we do. We don't spend $100 on meals, but when there's a language barrier, you just pay what they tell you to pay.
Golly.
We didn't do that again.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you want to touch on the Holocaust Museum? Because that's the first place you went when you came back. Or do you just want to leave that for another day? I'll ask you one thing about the Holocaust Museum and try to be very disciplined and concise with your answer if you can. So, having just left Israel and gone straight into the museum there, do you think that meant more to you? The fact that Israel happened because of the things that you saw in that museum, was that pretty mind-blowing?
I mean, I definitely made the connections. The details of the Holocaust are not new to me. Obviously, my profession, the history stuff, it's a story I'm pretty familiar with. What I was really interested to observe is what my kids would do when they understood it for the first time. I did not expect there to be a children's exhibit there, and there was, and it was beautifully crafted.
Was it brutal?
Yeah, it was brutal. And again, I don't care what anybody thinks about Palestine and Israel and where the line should be drawn or any of that. I don't care. The bottom line is a bunch of jackwagon people thought that the only way the world could get better is if they eliminated a race. And the clever process by which those awful people convinced others to go along with it and frog in the boiling potted the victims in such a precisely timed manner that there never was a really good moment to resist on a mass scale is so calculated and evil and stunning. And the children's exhibit did a great job of helping a kid or an adult understand how insidiously this crept up. And the biggest question I came away with is just, when would have been the right time for me to dig in? At what point, if I was going through what I'm seeing here, would I have needed to say something? And at what point would I have needed to go beyond saying something and be like, no, I won't do this, and I will physically resist this happening in my country?
Sounds like an excellent topic for another time.
There you go. I think so too. You asked me to be concise about my visit to the Holocaust Museum. Come on, man.
Yes, sir.
This was really fun, and it was ridiculously imbalanced toward me. So thanks for indulging all my Israel stuff, man. This was a cool way to do it. Clever. Nice work.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, this is somewhere I've always wanted to go, and not everybody can get $2,000 tickets for their entire family to go to Israel. That's pretty impressive. Good job, Camilla.
Good job, Camilla. Thank you, interwebs.